Hello there guys, welcome to another quick Reddit replies with me, Lazy Game Devs, and I just found this. It's been up there about a day, and it actually works really well with what I just did in that it's projectile based, so I figured, hey, why not? It's a little bit more complicated than the previous ones I've done, which is good, but we should be able to get through it pretty quickly. So the question is, in the user interface, he wants to hit a button that switches to projectile that's fired, and the photo is him trying to do that. It's how he's spawning the first projectile. How would he go about getting a UI button to switch to projectile that's fired? So let's have a look. Basically, he wants a button that's going to change between projectiles and how many ever projectiles he has and all that sort of thing. So I like to do things like this with databases, and you can pull a lot of information from databases, which is always really good. And you can get information from lots of different places. So let's have a quick look, shall we? I've already set up some variables and stuff because I've already done this, but I deleted everything other than a few little odd things, and we're just going to go through the whole thing again. So I have my two projectiles, and the first thing we need to do is put them into a database. So if you don't know how to make a database, first you need a struct, which is basically the structure of your database. So we're going to have bullet types struct. And we're going to need a actor, well, projectile in this case, because that's what I've called them. And we need a class reference. And this would be the projectile. Did I make this a thing? Yeah, okay, that's fine. That is a child of projectiles, that will work. We're going to need a texture 2D. That will be an object reference. And this is going to be so we can have an image that like represents it, right? Something like that. And you can put other information in here if you want to. You can put pretty much anything you like in here, but for this purpose, we're just going to have these. So now we have our struct. We're going to, well, I actually have one there, but we'll delete that. We're going to make a database, which is a miscellaneous data table. And we're going to pick the struct that we just made, which was bullet type struct. And we'll call this dt underscore bullet types. Now, one thing that's quite important for this, because the way I'm going to set it up is a little bit lazy, I guess, but it's just a very simple way of doing it. We're going to make two rows because I only have two projectiles, and we're going to name the rows numerically. 1 and 2 and 3, etc. is how you would want to do it, because we're just going to use integers to kind of iterate through them, and we're going to do it quite simple. So in this case, let's make that one projectile, and let's give it an image of that. Why not? And we'll have projectile 1, and we'll have this green icon. So we save that. We have our projectile set up in a database. Now let's go into the character. And don't need this right now. So this was how I'm spawning my projectile on the previous tutorial. It's simply a spawn actor. We're spawning the projectile and we're just doing it in front of me, and we're doing it at the hit result of my cursor. So we need this to change, right? This class. So we're going to make a function which is going to be usable by the UI. I forgot to mention as well, actually, I have set up the UI. So you can see I have like an image and a button here. They don't do anything because I removed all the code. But if you don't know how to set up any UI things, I'm sure you can find tutorials online. I haven't got one at the moment, but I'm sure I will do in the future. And we're going to set up this function, and we're going to call it new function iterate bullets, whatever. Just call it whatever you like. Is iterate 2t? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's fine. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get our current bullet slot, which by default is going to be 1. Just as an example, you know, you could probably have this saved somewhere. If you're changing levels, you could save this out, and you know, when you go into the next room, you're not back to the default bullet or whatever. And you know, that's a lot more complex. We're not covering that, but that's something you can definitely do. And we need to know the amount of bullets we have as well. And this is going to be quite important, and this is a little bit of a pain because you can't actually get like a number of rows in a data table. So what we're going to have to do is I'm going to go into the character and begin play, and I'm going to get data table row names. We're going to select that data table. I'm actually going to use this sequence. Okay. And we're going to do a for loop. For each row, basically, we want to set the amount of bullets to be the amount of bullets plus 1. Plus in. Plus 1. There may be a better way of doing this. I haven't found one. But yeah. So this is basically going to say, okay, you have 0. Oh, look, the row 1, you have 1. Row 2, you have 2. This is so we can loop back round to 1. So we're not going to be saying, oh, we want row 3, 4, and 5, but 3, 4, and 5 don't exist, right? So now we have that. And that just happens once. We're not doing that repeatedly or anything. It's just at the beginning of the game, it's just checking how many bullets there are, or how many bullet types there are. And then, yeah, you got it set. So the current bullet slot by default is 1, because that's where we want to start. And what we're going to do is we're going to, when we hit iterate bullets, we're going to get the current amount of bullets, and we're going to plus an integer, and we're going to plus 1. And we're going to set that to that. So we're saying, right, I want to iterate through, and my current is 1, and I want to make it 2, right? If the amount of bullets, if the current bullet slot is more than the amount of bullets we have, right, then we want to branch off. What we want to do is more than that. If that is true, then we want to set our current bullet slot back to 1. So this is going to make it go round in a loop. So every time we press this, we're going to go 1, 2, and then it's going to go, it's more than the amount of bullets we have. Back to 1, 2, back to 1, 2. It's going to make sure we don't, go into nowhere land. Okay, so we have our iteration, and we're going to need to do a few other things. So what we want to do is go into here. Here we go. And we're going to get a data table. Well, we would be doing this every time actually. So what we can do is set another variable. And this can be the variable of projectile. And it will be a class reference. And we'll say chosen projectile. And then in our iterate bullets function, we will get the database, get data table row, and we will choose that current bullet slot. And what we need to do is change this to a string. No. To string. To string. There we go. And then that will convert into a name. So we're getting that current bullet slot, and we are doing that. Right, okay. So one thing we want to do is actually make sure that this is set to both. So we want to do that, because even if it's false and we go up, we still want to do this. And we'll set the data table. Oh, that's annoying. Sorry, me being really picky. There we go. Okay. So yeah, we're getting the row name, we're setting it, and we're saying, okay, so this is why we had to set the, oh my god, this is why we had to set the row name as 1, 2, and 3, because we're just going to use integers to kind of iterate through them, and then pull that out as the row name. So when the row is found, we're going to break that, and we're going to set this, set chosen projectile, to this. Okay, and then in our attack here, we will just pop chosen projectile in there. So now as we iterate through, we're setting that variable, and that's going to change the actual bullet we spawn. That's going to change the projectile that we're spawning to whatever's chosen in the database. While we're inside this function as well, we're going to have an output, and this is going to be that texture 2D. And we want it to be object reference. Okay, where to put that? There. Tick. And we're just going to plug this into here. We'll call it texture 2D. Okay, so that's all we need for that function. Now I'm going to head over to the widget, which just looks like this. It's just got like an image of whatever and a little button. So on the image, we don't need to do anything. I have this, but you don't actually need that. Remove that. And we have this button. And what you're going to want to do is come down here to onClicked, and we'll click there. And now we have this onClicked. So when we click the button, we want to get the player character. We're going to cast to third person. Oh, top-down character, sorry, in this case. And we're going to run that function, which was iterate bullets. So that's what we're going to do. And that should do the job. From there, we're going to get that image that we have in the UI. So that's getting this image here. And we're going to set texture, set brush from texture. Now, when we iterate through, we're getting that database table back, and we're using this to pass through that texture. So we can just pop that in there. And what that should do is when we press it, it should update the bullet that we're firing via the variable in our character. And then it should also update this and change the image as well. So let's see if it works. Okay, we're shooting the orange one, and it resets back to 1. Now we're shooting the white one, and the orange, and the white. Brilliant. Okay, so one thing we can do is, if you notice that this is actually not doing anything by default, which is obviously a problem. So what we can do is in our event graph, I can set the current bullet slot to 0 by default instead of 1. And in our event graph, we can actually have it in here where we just do this once. Just at the beginning, we'll just iterate the bullet once, and then we'll go from 0 to 1, right? And that should solve that, but it doesn't. So that's good. Okay, so it does solve it. It's just not updating that. Right, but of course, because we're actually doing that on the push of the button. You know, there's some fiddling to do there. But you could definitely just have a set texture or something in there. Yeah. That's you could always, I guess, have like a event construct and then run this as well. Actually, you could just do that and remove that. There we go. That's a much better way of doing it. There we go. So now we have the first one, and then we have the second, and we iterate through. Cool. So there you are, guys. If you want to have multiple projectiles and things like that, now you have a database, and all you need to do is literally create a child of your base projectile, and we'll call it green. Let's try and make it a green color, I suppose. That works. There we go. And we'll go into our database, and we'll add a new one, and we'll call this 3. We'll choose green, And we'll add a texture of, well, it's not green, but you know, whatever, just to make it confusing. We'll just make this little like devil thing, and it should just work, right? So I come in now and I've got the green, the red, the orange one, and then I press again and now I have the green one. Because it's all in the data table, so as you update, everything else updates with it. So yeah, thank you very much guys. I hope that helps someone out there, and take care, have a good day.